Chapter 4500. Yes, Senior. Gong Shu Yiming hurriedly answered, standing there. We are Dongfang Yushan, Shimin Hingyue, Nangong Pingping, and Baiming Chihan. Greetings, Master of Stars and Moon. The four extraordinarily dignified 7th grade Elemental Force Grandmasters cupped their fists in greeting. Greetings, Immortals. Fairy Xingyu did not find it strange and said with a smile, the last time I explored the Star Moon Palace, the four aristocratic families did not send the four fellow immortals. I presume that the four fellow immortals have already obtained opportunities in the Star Moon Palace and become literary sages? Dongfang Yushan smiled. You're right. The patriarchs of the four aristocratic families also sent us to greet you. Thank you for providing us with information. If you need our help in the future, please feel free to ask. When it comes to cooperation, both sides will benefit, but if we don't, both sides will suffer. Fairy Xingyu nodded slightly. Please go back and report to the patriarchs of the four aristocratic families that Zhai Xinglu is Xingyu's Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace is Xingyu's Moon Embracing Palace. If they leave Xingyu, they will no longer be Zhai Xinglu and Moon Embracing Palace. The four Confucian cultivators looked at each other. Although they did not quite understand the meaning of these words, they somewhat understood in their hearts. They hurriedly nodded and said, We understand. After we reach the Star Moon Palace, we will definitely pass on these words to the patriarch. Good. Fairy Xingyu flicked her sleeves and said, The signs of the Star Moon Palace's appearance have already appeared. It won't be long before the Star Moon Palace appears. As usual, I will go in first, followed by the four aristocratic families. Thank you, Fairy. Dongfang Yushan looked at everyone and said, We will take our leave first. See you in the Star Moon Palace. Fairy Xingyu responded and turned to fly to the resting place of the Zhai Xinglu disciples. Dongfang Yushan flew back with Baiming Chihan and the others. Nangong Pingping smiled and said in a low voice, Brothers, this Master of Stars and Moon seems very arrogant. She doesn't seem to take us seriously. Brother Nangong seems to be interested in this woman? Baiming Chihan looked at Nangong Pingping with interest and smiled. I'm interested. Nangong Pingping did not hide his intentions and replied, It's a pity that before I left, the patriarch reminded me again and again that I must not disrespect the Master of Stars and Moons. I have the heart but not the strength. As long as you have the heart, you have the intention. Shimin Hingyue said with a smile, This huge star moon really makes all the forces in the world envious. If you can deal with the Star Moon Lord, doesn't Xingyue belong to the Nangong family? Nangong Pingping hurriedly waved his hand and said, I only have the intention. The one with the power is Brother Dongfang. As long as he lifts a finger, Xingyue, shu. Dongfang Yushan hurriedly stopped Nangong Pingping when he saw that Nangong Pingping's words were getting more and more unbearable. Brothers, just say what you want, don't be too frivolous. How could someone who could establish Star Moon be an ordinary person? The patriarch has already told us to be careful, so why should we look for trouble? I don't know about other cultivators, but senior brother Heng Si, who entered the Star Moon Palace last time, clearly said that the Master of Stars and Moons is a mutant. If you want to obtain an opportunity in the Star Moon Palace and come back alive, don't provoke the Master of Stars and Moons. Nangong Pingping shrunk his neck and said with a smile, I'm just saying. The disciples of the four great families flew back to the flying boat as they spoke. Beside the Chitty River, Xiaohua looked at the sparkling water and the moonlight and transmitted his voice. Senior, Su Ji did not understand why Xiaohua transmitted his voice and replied, What's the matter? Although Xiaohua was about to speak, he hesitated for a moment when the words reached his mouth. Just say it. Su Ji said, As long as it doesn't involve the secrets of the immortal world, I can answer you. Senior, in your hometown, before you ascended, did you have a dual cultivation partner? Xiaohua gritted his teeth and asked. You can't invade my privacy. Su Ji refused without hesitation. Alright. Xiaohua said helplessly, Actually, Junior thinks that Fairy Xingyue is pretty good. She also has some feelings for Senior. Junior doesn't know if Senior can see it, but as an outsider, Junior can see it clearly. Junior missed a lot of good times before. I don't want Senior to have regrets in the future. Junior thinks that even if there is a gap between two celestial venerables in the immortal world, the matter between you two is a private matter and has nothing to do with the Palace of Punishment and the Palace of Justice. I know. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, Su Ji replied in an unusually calm tone. As the saying goes, time breeds love. In the 3 continents, only Xingyue and I have something to talk about. The 2 of us have been together for so long, how can I not know her thoughts? Then, Senior's heart also has a knot in it? Xiao Hua somewhat understood and asked tentatively. That's right. Su Ji nodded. Could it be that you don't have a knot in your heart? Shui didn't leave a mark in your heart? Forget it, Senior. Xiao Hua raised his hands and surrendered. Just pretend that Junior didn't say anything. It's good that you understand. Su Ji looked at the surging river and whispered, everyone has their own experiences, everyone has their own choices, and everyone has their own consequences to face. I am a punishment envoy, so I naturally know more than you. In terms of feelings, when I was cultivating in my hometown, I could be considered romantic and elegant. But when you walk through flowers, you will always step on the petals and may even be injured by the thorns. When you turn around, other than the fragrance of the flowers on your clothes, how much beauty can you retain? Time flies, the autumn wind urges people, when the snowflakes flutter, even the branches of the flowers will wither. Hee, that's true. Xiao Hua said with a smile, Senior's appearance is much more handsome than Junior's, and you have also learned a lot in this aspect. Junior just wanted to remind Senior. Roar. Xiao Hua wanted to say something more, but somewhere in the Chitty River, a loud roar suddenly sounded, and beams of starlight and moonlight fell. It was actually a few great demons fighting. Sometimes I envy these demons. Su Ji looked and said with some emotion, if they want to fight, they fight, and if they want to scold, they have no scruples. Their cultivation is also unique. They don't care about Dao heart, Dao realm, nor are they afraid of inner demons. They only need to temper their demon bodies. Those are all demons with inheritances. Xiao Hua said with a smile. There are also the vast majority of demons who don't know how to cultivate. They also learn from our Dao sex human race, wanting to condense a demon core in their body. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish, Su Ji said, you are wrong. This world doesn't have a completely orthodox cultivation method. In the Demon League, there are also those who cultivate demon cores. Xiao Hua was a bit dumbfounded. He was proficient in demon cultivation. That heaven-defying Thunder Phoenix was his clone. How is that possible? Nothing is impossible. Su Ji glanced at Xiao Hua, somewhat surprised by his shock, and replied, the reason why the Demon League is called the Demon League is because it is made up of extremely suitable demon territories, and different demon territories have different cultivation methods. Either condense the body, condense the core or Dharma body, or devour the demon soul and condense the soul body. Of course, there are many other methods even I don't know. Alas, it's a mess. Xiao Hua sighed. Junior only thought that Junior knew the truth, but when the truth was revealed, Junior knew. The truth is not the truth, the illusion is also the truth. You are right. Su Ji nodded. What I said may not be right. After all, the Demon League is only the Demon League. What about above the immortal world? Above the Demon League? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. Senior, what is the purpose of cultivation? It's... Su Ji smiled. It's a secret. Xiao Hua shrugged and said in a low voice, all right, just pretend that Junior didn't ask anything. The truth of the matter is the truth of the world. It is also like water flowing when the channel is right. If it is not the time for you to know, then you don't have to know. And when it is time for you to know, the truth will float in front of your eyes without waiting for you to find it. Su Ji said, I have been a punishment envoy for so many years, I have also experienced many things. From these things, I have obtained 4 words. Let nature take its course. Xiao Hua's words hit the nail on the head. Yes, that's right. Su Ji nodded, not sounding surprised. You have a very easygoing temper. It is easy for you to let nature take its course. This is also Junior's shortcoming. You can say that I am an unambitious person. I like to live a comfortable life that is not as good as the best, but better than the worst. This is already the best life. Su Ji sighed. Why is the fight getting fiercer? As they spoke, another 100 great demons joined the battle. The battle was getting bigger and bigger. Xiao Hua asked worriedly, don't we need to shout for them to stop? Don't worry about them. Su Ji glanced casually and said, the demon clan has always been like this. Before the Xingyue Palace appears, the power of the starlight will become violent. This will incur the wrath of some great demons with unstable foundations, and it will be easy for fights to break out. When their eyes turn red from fighting, that is when the Xingyue Palace appears. Hearing this, Xiao Hua hurriedly turned to look at Zhai Xinglu's spaceship. Indeed, Fairy Xingyue had already given the order from Zhai Xinglu, and a group of Zhai Xinglu's disciples began to prepare for departure. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Chidi River. The space that had been disturbed by the fluctuations earlier had sped up again. Layer upon layer of silver tadpole-like light spots had already covered nearly 10,000 miles of the river surface. Under the silver light, the previously orange river surface gave off a crimson glow, looking very strange. Xiao Hua muttered in his heart, the Xingyue Palace is finally going to appear. This famous Xingyue Palace. What will it look like? Thinking of the Xingyue Palace, Xiao Hua unconsciously thought of the illusory array in the ruins when he fought with the unrestrained heavenly demon. A shuddering feeling quietly emerged from the bottom of his heart. Or rather, a shadow gradually shrouded his heart. Could it be a trap? Xiao Hua couldn't help but look at Su Ji. Su Ji didn't pay attention to anything else, but instead focused his attention on the sky above the Chidi River. His face was slightly nervous. Xiao Hua was slightly relieved. It shouldn't be. This is not the first time we have entered the Xingyue Palace. Su Ji and Fairy Xingyue have already explored the passageway a few times and returned safely. Chapter 4501. Another hour passed. Suddenly, the crescent moon that was hanging in the sky for half a day suddenly streaked across the vast sky and nailed itself in the middle of the night sky. Furthermore, the crescent moon from before suddenly expanded, revealing other parts of the shadow. A full moon was swollen and scattered moonlight. The night sky that was originally filled with brilliant stars was now filled with no stars at all. This moonlight was so bright that tens of thousands of miles around the Chidi River were as bright as day. In just a moment, the full moon seemed to shatter, turning into tens of thousands of fragments. Even the moonlight that filled the sky was also divided. Pillars of light appeared in the night sky, and at this time, the night sky seemed to be unable to cover the Chidi River, turning into darkness that was mixed in between the pillars of light. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Although it came from the horizon, it also shook the hearts of all the humans and demons. The entire world shook under this roar. Like a watermelon being opened, the stars in the night sky were like melon seeds inside the melon, flashing with a black brilliance. It was clearly a black brilliance, but in the dark night, it was clearly seen by people. However, when Xiao Hua's eyes turned, the black turned into a red color. After the red color, the 6 colors of orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple flashed clearly. In the end, every starlight turned into a halo, revealing a translucent milky white starlight. Wang wang wang. On the Chidi River, the space within tens of thousands of miles was shaking. The river water that previously seemed to be tightly pressed down by a large hand was now slowly being split. In just a few breaths, the seemingly endless and bottomless Chidi River was actually split into 2 halves. The severed river water was not like an ordinary river water, forming waves, but was still as calm as before. Swish, swish, swish. At the same time the Chidi River was cut off, the moonlight that had previously splashed across the Thousand Demons' sacred realm also began to gather, falling within a radius of 1,000,000 miles around the Chidi River. The mottled light and shadow looked like a layer of a giant tree's crown blocking the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. As the light and shadow fell, a thick shadow gradually appeared. An indescribable majesty, heaviness, fear, and suppression seeped out from this shadow. With the appearance of this black shadow, Countless chaotic fluctuations rushed out in all directions. Space began to be disturbed, and the heaven and earth origin energy, as well as the aura of righteousness, turned into chaos. An apocalyptic pressure descended upon the Crimson River. Primordial world? As soon as Xiaohua came in contact with this fluctuation and aura, his expression immediately changed. He was simply too familiar with this aura. The ruins were still fine, as the aura of the human clan had rushed out of the desolation aura. However, the incomplete desolation continent was filled with this kind of desolation aura. However, on the incomplete Eldritch continent, the aura of the Eldritch continent was not complete, or rather, it was as ordinary as grass. It did not have the domineering and ferocious aura of the Star Moon Palace before him. Boom, boom, boom. In the middle of the moon, the silhouette of the Star Moon Palace was revealed. Following that, countless pillars of stars shot down. Just like the moonlight, the starlight that had previously covered the entire Thousand Demons' sacred realm was now all projected onto the outline of the Star Moon Palace. Pillars of starlight transcended time and space and landed on the Chitty River. The pillars of starlight were first twisted into knots before rushing into the outline of the Star Moon Palace. In just a few breaths' time, a huge object whose entire outline could not be seen clearly appeared above the Chitty River. This huge object was completely condensed from the brilliance of the moon and stars. Countless huge spots of light swam wantonly within it. Every time it moved, a majestic desolation aura would rush into the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Wherever this desolation aura passed, hundreds of miles of space would be penetrated, forming a chaotic layer that isolated the Star Moon Palace from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Senior, is this the Star Moon Palace? Seeing that the Star Moon Palace had appeared, but it was not what he had imagined at all, Xiaohua could not help but ask, "Why? Can't I see the palace door? I can't see the palace either?" Su Ji replied indifferently, "Who told you that the Star Moon Palace must be a palace? Who told you that something named by Fairy Xing you must have a plaque of the Star Moon Palace?" "Sigh, I understand now." Xiaohua sighed. This Star Moon Palace might not be a palace at all. It might not be. However, it's most likely still a palace. Su Ji replied. "When we first entered, the Star Moon Palace already looked like a palace. Otherwise, why would Fairy Xingyu name this object the Star Moon Palace? Moreover, there are also halls inside the Star Moon Palace. What about the palace door?" Xiaohua smiled bitterly. "Without the palace door, how do we enter? Don't be anxious, don't be anxious." Su Ji said unhurriedly. "The entrance will appear eventually. It's just a matter of time." That's true. Why should I be anxious?" Xiaohua nodded. "Indeed," Su Ji replied casually. "You're not anxious, but the eunuch is." "What?" Xiaohua was stunned. He did not quite understand. "It's nothing." Su Ji was slightly taken aback. He then explained, "This is a saying from my hometown." "Oh." Seeing that Su Ji did not explain further, Xiaohua responded and released his divine thought. However, when his divine thought touched the chaotic layer of space, it was immediately shattered by the space. He could not pass through it at all. At the edge of the space, the desolation aura was abnormally dense. This Star Moon Palace really looks like an ancient relic. At this point, Xiaohua no longer had any doubts about the origins of the Star Moon Palace. This was because he could clearly see with his naked eye that this Star Moon Palace was somewhat similar to Panga's axe. What the Star Moon Palace had revealed earlier was not a real palace, but an illusory silhouette. Only after the pillar of light from the stars and moon had fallen did it solidify into a real body. Seeing this, Xiaohua had some understanding. Wasn't Panga's axe the same? On the Desolation Continent, Panga's axe was just an illusory silhouette. Only in the 3 continents would Panga's axe become a real body. Of course, the Star Moon Palace was on the other side of a chaotic layer of space. If this layer of space disappeared, the complete Star Moon Palace would definitely be revealed. Xiaohua and Su Ji were fully focused on observing the Star Moon Palace. The other forces were also rubbing their palms together. The disciples of Zhai Xinglu had already flown behind Xiao Hua and Su Ji, lining up in the formation they had rehearsed earlier, waiting for the right time. In the distance, the disciples of the four great clans were also waiting in formation, waiting for the Star Moon Palace to make a move. Behind the four great clans and the Star Moon Palace, the 100 schools of thought, which were Confucian cultivators, were also eyeing covetously. The Star Moon Palace was huge. In other places, some Taoist cultivators, some Buddhist protectors, and most of the great demons of the demon clan released their remarkable abilities, waiting for the Star Moon Palace to open. Fairy Xingyu flew to Su Ji's side and said softly, "So far, I haven't seen anything unusual." "No." Su Ji shook his head. "The power of the stars and moon this time is too strong. The spatial barrier around the Star Moon Palace is also too thick. I'm afraid it won't be easy to pass through." Isn't it that 7 stars great sage from the Great Sage Hall?" Fairy Xingyu gritted her teeth in hatred. He didn't become a sage earlier or later, but he actually became a sage at this juncture. Moreover, not only did he trigger the 7 stars transit, but he also triggered the 10,000 stars transit after entering the Great Sage Hall. Of course, this greatly increased the strength of the 1,000 demons' sacred realm, but it also triggered too much of the power of the stars and moon in the 3 continents. Su Ji did not complain like Fairy Xingyu. Instead, he said softly, "We can pass through this spatial barrier easily, but the disciples of Zhai Xinglu and those cultivators who are sensitive to the power of the stars and moon will be in trouble." "What are you afraid of?" Fairy Xingyu pursed her lips and smiled. She looked as if she had a card up her sleeve. She said, "If it was the last time, we would naturally have to worry and waste our dermic powers. But this time, we don't have to worry at all." Although Fairy Xingyu did not look at Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Before Su Ji could speak, he said, "Seniors, you don't have to worry about this. Leave it to me. I'll keep them in the Kunlun mirror first and release them after they enter." "There's another problem," Fairy Xingyu said worriedly. "I'm afraid that we won't be able to find a pavilion in the Star Moon Palace where we can use storage bags. That'll be troublesome." "Ah." Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, "Senior, do you mean there's no way to use imperial weapons or magic treasures like the Heaven and Earth bracelet in the Star Moon Palace?" "Of course." Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly. "I don't know why the Star Moon Palace is so strange. Even among the immortals. Sigh, it seems that there are very few such restrictions. Let's keep these cultivators in the Kunlun mirror first." Su Ji ordered without hesitation. "Although the Starry Sky maze is difficult, we have a 20% chance of success. Including them, it's only 40%. Now that Xiao Hua is with us, even if he has a 10% chance, it's still 30%. It's best if these cultivators can come out. If they can't, then they can't." "Okay." Xiao Hua nodded and said to Fairy Xingyu, "Fairy, come with me and let those disciples of Zhai Xinglu enter my Kunlun mirror." "But..." Fairy Xingyue responded and was about to turn around and fly back. Woo! A gust of wind suddenly whistled. In the distance, where the demon clan had gathered, a great demon that was at least 10,000 feet in size suddenly flapped its wings and pounced toward Xingyue Palace, wanting to take the lead. "Damn it!" Fairy Xingyu paused and raised her right hand. A halo of stars appeared on her right index finger. However, Fairy Xingyu was still a little too slow. Just as she was about to point it out, the great demon had already rushed into the chaotic space. Swoosh! The great demon's body landed. Dazzling starlight shone from the great demon's body as it rushed into the space. The great demon's body instantly expanded by more than 30%. In just a few breaths, the great demon's body had completely disappeared into the space. At this moment, wherever the great demon's body passed, starlight shone and traces of its flight were clearly visible. What puzzled Xiao Hua and the others was that although the great demon seemed to be approaching the Star Moon Palace in an arc, what was revealed in the chaotic interlayer space was actually a complicated bowknot. Chapter 4502. When the great demon flew into the middle of the chaotic mezzanine, the light from his body was suddenly extinguished. His body, which had expanded previously, rapidly shrank at the same time and returned to its original size in the blink of an eye. Not only that, but in the next few breaths, the great demon's body continued to shrink until it was only 30% of its original size. Humph, you're courting death. Fairy Xingyu's expression was cautious at first, but when she saw the great demon's body shrink, a sneer appeared on her face. She said to Xiaohua, "Let's go. There's no need to look anymore. The door to the Star Moon Palace has not been opened yet. If you go in now, you'll only die." Xiaohua nodded and retreated steadily. His gaze was still fixed on the great demon. Sure enough, Xiaohua had only flown a few dozen feet when the great demon's body and mind suddenly swayed in the spatial mezzanine. Like a kite that had lost its string, it kept tumbling in the wind. Every time it tumbled, the great demon's body shrank. When it had shrunk to the size of a few dozen feet, it turned into a shadow and fell into the Chitty River. Unfortunately, there were no waves on the Chitty River. Who knew what kind of spatial crevice this reckless great demon had fallen into? "You want to enter the Star Moon Palace before my Zhai Xinglu? What a joke!" Fairy Xingyu said hatefully. If the Star Moon Palace was so easy to enter, would the 4 aristocratic families let my Zhai Xinglu enter first? Xiaohua smiled faintly and did not agree. He was still wondering why the spatial mezzanine was so strange. Fairy Xingyu ordered, and the disciples of Zhai Xinglu obeyed. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and activated his dermic powers to send the disciples into the Kunlun wonderland. Gongshu Isin, Gongshu Yiming, and Emo Jianli naturally followed him in. However, they were in the Shenhua continent. Zhai Xinglu was now the center of attention. Everything that Xiaohua did fell into everyone's eyes. Seeing the disciples of Zhai Xinglu disappear, the disciples of the 4 aristocratic families smiled thought-provoking. While Xiaohua was casting his technique, Su Ji transmitted his voice over from afar. Fairy Xingyu did not disturb Xiaohua and flew over. At that moment, the thick and massive silhouette of the Star Moon Palace began to move. The light of the stars and the moon that had previously condensed into the silhouette of the Star Moon Palace flowed like stars. High up in the sky, the light of the stars and the moon continued to fall, colliding with the flowing brilliance of the Xingyue Palace. A scene that was more dazzling than all the fireworks in the world was presented before everyone. The light fell into the chaotic interlayer in the middle, refracting layers of magnificent illusions. These illusions were like a fairyland, like the traces of a devil. Traces of unfathomable fluctuations were also emitted. The fireworks lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea before a saber-shaped brilliance strangely flashed past. Then, a cluster of waves rushed out from the Star Moon Palace. The fireworks were split in half by the saber light. The waves seeped out from the gap and a shadow that looked like the word, convex, was born from the fireworks. As soon as this shadow appeared, it immediately expanded along with the fluctuations. Layers upon layers of overlapping shadows rushed into the chaotic interlayer of space. What was very strange was that when this shadow entered the interlayer, it began to spiral and twist in the same way as when the great demon flew in. In just a moment, countless convex-shaped shadows began to spread throughout the entire interlayer of space. No one could tell which shadow was connected to which. "Xiaohua!" Su Ji called out in a deep voice. "This is the door of the Star Moon Palace. Let's prepare to enter." Xiaohua had just kept the Kunlun mirror and flew to Su Ji and Fairy Xingyu's side. When he saw this situation, he naturally knew that the Star Moon Palace door had appeared. However, what Xiaohua had never expected was that this Star Moon Palace door was a little too strange, wasn't it? Not to mention that there was no lofty gatehouse, not to mention that there were no imposing flower pillars, there wasn't even the outline of the door. It was just a specious shadow. Of course, the way this shadow appeared was really annoying. The path that stepped into the shadow was filled with death. Xiaohua involuntarily cried out, This is the so-called Star Moon Palace door? I've thought about it for a long time and looked forward to it for so many years. I really never dreamed that the Star Moon Palace door would be like this. Do you think that the palace door is all dignified? Do you think that the palace door is all carved beams and painted pillars? Fairy Xingyu sneered. Don't you see that there are 9 other doors in the Immortal Palace? In addition to these 9 doors, there are also side doors and side doors. If an ordinary Confucian cultivator wants to enter the Immortal Palace, do you expect him to enter through the main door? Xiaohua touched his nose in boredom and said with a wry smile, yes, cats have their own ways, and mice have their own ways. Could it be that the Star Moon Palace door is different from the usual one? In the eyes of the ancient god clan, we are indeed inferior to cats and mice. Fairy Xingyu sighed. However, after Fairy Xingyu finished speaking, Su Ji exclaimed in surprise, oh no! Xingyu, look, the light path of the palace door did not break through the spatial mezzanine. We are not even qualified to set foot in the palace door. How is that possible? Fairy Xingyu was shocked. She hurriedly looked over. Sure enough, countless convex, light shadows covered the spatial mezzanine. However, these light shadows were all within the mezzanine, and none of them fell on the edge of the mezzanine. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Fairy Xingyu cursed angrily and flew toward the Chidi River. Su Ji looked at Xiaohua and slowed down a little. Xiaohua asked in a low voice, Senior, what did it look like in the past? In the past, the shadows of these palace doors came out from the spatial mezzanine. There were tens of thousands of shadows in the space. Su Ji explained in a low voice, we only needed to rely on our celestial artifacts to find the correct shadows and the correct route. Now that the shadows of the palace door can't be seen, Senior's celestial artifacts can't work, right? Xiaohua asked. Yes, that's right. Su Ji nodded and explained, as you can see, the waves that are emitted from the Star Moon Palace are left behind from the ancient times when the Star Moon Palace was being refined. It is different from the waves of Yuan Qi of the heaven and earth and the waves of the formation. When these fluctuations fall into the space of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, they will collapse the nearby space, forming a kind of mezzanine. Within this mezzanine, there is a kind of disorderly chaos. There is no heaven-earth essence Qi, no righteous Qi, and only a little light from the stars and the moon. You saw it just now. When a 7th grade essence Qi great demon falls into this space, it becomes an ordinary demonic beast. Not to mention our celestial artifacts, even immortal artifacts can't be activated here. In other words, the 2 seniors can't be sure which of these countless shadows of the palace door is the real one. Xiaohua frowned and immediately thought of the situation when he was searching for the entrance to the mysterious water palace on the Saint River. The entrance to the mysterious water palace was formed by the light shadows through a vortex. It looked different from the entrance to the Star Moon Palace, but in fact, they were similar. However, the palace door of the Star Moon Palace was more complicated and harder to find. These shadows of the palace door are all fake. Su Ji's expression did not change as he explained faintly, only the door that appeared on the Star Moon Palace is the real one. What we are really looking for is the fluctuation that rushed out of the door. This fluctuation repels the disorderly chaos around it, forming a temporary passage. In this mezzanine space, only this passage is safe. Seniors, why didn't you tell me earlier? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Otherwise, I could have thought of other ways, Fairy Xingyu said helplessly, because we have a probing celestial artifact. The previous few times, this space mezzanine was not a problem at all. I didn't expect that we can't even step into the Star Moon Palace's door this time. There are so many shadows of the palace door. Xiaohua looked around and secretly wondered if he should activate the Delusion Breaker Dharma Eye. After all, the Delusion Breaker Dharma Eye was a rather secretive divine ability. He did not want so many humans and demon clans to know about it for the time being. There are more than that. Fairy Xingyu smiled bitterly. There's more? Xiaohua was shocked. As expected, before he could finish his sentence, he saw the Star Moon Palace move again. The brilliance of the stars and moon that had condensed into the Star Moon Palace flowed again. The protruding door also moved. As it moved, another wave of fluctuation was generated from the door, crashing into the spatial mezzanine. Illusory palace doors that were exactly the same as the previous one appeared again. They either intersected or overlapped with the previous ones, causing the entire spatial mezzanine to become even more chaotic. Damn it! Fairy Xing Yu could no longer bear it. She opened her mouth and spat out a palm-sized star shuttle. As soon as the star shuttle appeared, it immediately emitted bright starlight. Countless heaven and earth yuan qi rushed into it like a gust of wind. Fairy Xing Yu formed a seal with one hand. This seal was so obscure that even someone as strong as Xiao Hua could not understand it. When Fairy Xing Yu's hand glowed with moonlight that resembled fireflies, she raised her hand and waved it. The moonlight fell into the star shuttle. The star shuttle was transparent and rushed into the sky. The star shuttle landed in the space mezzanine in front of Xiao Hua and immediately exploded, turning into a starry sky that was thousands of miles in size. There were many stars twinkling in the starry sky. Each star corresponded to a shadow of a palace door within this 1,000 miles. Penetrate! Fairy Xing Yu shouted softly. Every star extended a pillar of stars and shot into the space mezzanine. It seemed that Fairy Xing Yu wanted to break through the space mezzanine by force. The pillar of starlight shot into the spatial mezzanine. Similar to the great demon from before, it expanded abruptly. However, after charging a few li, the pillar of starlight showed signs of dissipating. Moreover, the pillar of starlight started to bend, and its entire trajectory condensed into a knot of light. Disregarding the fact that the knot of light was intermittent, whether Xiao Hua and the others could safely reach the correct palace door phantom after charging through the pillar of starlight. Based on the fact that the pillar of starlight had turned into stardust after charging a few more li, Xiao Hua understood that given immortal Xing Yu's methods, she probably wouldn't be able to find the true palace door phantom. Su Ji, give me a hand. Fairy Xing Yu shouted, unwilling to admit defeat. I don't believe it. Chapter 4503. Even if I can help you, I'm afraid we don't have enough time. Su Ji's face also showed disappointment as he replied bitterly, it will take too long for your star shuttle to rush into the spatial mezzanine. I'm afraid we won't be able to find the real palace door. The palace door of the Star Moon Palace has already closed. What? Xiao Hua was shocked again. How long will the palace door of the Star Moon Palace last? Why didn't you say so earlier? Su Ji did not explain to him. He only said, 2 hours at most, half an hour at least. Oh, there's still time. Xiao Hua nodded and asked again, if this junior can find the general area, senior will be able to activate the star shuttle, right? You can determine the general area? Fairy Xing Yu was overjoyed. This junior will try. Xiao Hua nodded. However, this junior can't guarantee it. Xiao Hua, you are indeed our savior. Fairy Xing Yu shouted, Su Ji, your divination technique is really accurate. Seniors, get ready. Xiao Hua said in a low voice as he looked around. On the entire Crimson Ground River, tens of thousands of humans and demons were watching the three of them perform a one-man show. By the way, senior, you can also ask the 4 great families and the great demons to think of a way. We can't always be the vanguard. Xiao Hua thought of a way to distract them and whispered to Fairy Xing Yu. Fairy Xing Yu nodded and said, yes, they used to follow Zhai Xing Lu and drink soup. Now let them do something. After saying that, Fairy Xing Yu flew up into the sky and sent a voice transmission to the 4 great families, the Confucian cultivators, and the great demons of the demon clan. Xiao Hua nodded at Su Ji and the 2 of them flew closer to the spatial mezzanine. Su Ji waved his hand and the exploded star shuttle was restored. The dim starlight fell into his hand. Xiao Hua stopped and turned his head to look. Under Fairy Xing Yu's voice transmission, the 4 great families and the Confucian cultivators were also a little flustered. They gathered together to discuss, while the great demons of the demon clan rushed into the mezzanine one after another. They each found a direction and activated their innate divine abilities, trying to find the real palace door. Senior, Xiao Hua whispered, please protect this junior. I don't want others to see my divine abilities. All right. Without another word, Su Ji raised his arms high into the sky and spread his 5 fingers. Like a peacock spreading its tail, lightning immediately enveloped the surrounding hundreds of miles. Inside the thunder, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead. A ghostly green light flashed and the delusion breaker eyes slowly opened. Hiss. Xiao Hua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air when he saw everything through the illusion breaker eye. In front of Xiao Hua's eyes was an incomparably huge golden color. This golden color made Xiao Hua's delirium transcendence eye sour. Within the golden light, an irregular orange hole that looked like a hole was slowly moving. The orange hole radiated a tricolored flow. This flow was like a spring rushing into a grayish-black flowing wave. The flowing wave was shaking violently. Clusters of green and silver flashed constantly. The tricolored flow created a faintly discernible passageway in the flowing wave, and then dissipated within the flowing wave. "Over there," Xiao Hua whispered to Su Ji. However, the illusory image of the palace door is changing from time to time. "All right." Su Ji's face was still calm as he replied via voice transmission, "As long as you can roughly determine the range." After saying that, Su Ji turned around and sent a voice transmission to Fairy Xingyu. Fairy Xingyu was currently saying something to the Shimin family. She did not expect Xiao Hua to be able to determine the location in such a short period of time. Therefore, without another word, she immediately teleported to Xiao Hua's side. Fairy Xingyu's actions naturally attracted the attention of the four great families. While they were discussing, they were also watching the movements of Xiao Hua and the others. Su Ji sent a voice transmission to Fairy Xingyu. The two of them exchanged opinions and then led Xiao Hua to the location of the illusory image of the palace door. At this moment, some great demons of the demon clan had already begun to force their way into the spatial mezzanine. There were also some Confucian families and heavenly kings of the Buddhist sect who had made preparations. They activated their imperial equipment or heavenly eyes to explore the spatial mezzanine. They saw the illusory image of the palace door. At this time, because the Star Moon Palace had moved again, there were already more than 10,000 illusory images of the palace door within 100 miles. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "Senior Su, please continue to protect me. I will activate my divine ability first. After I have some clues, can you activate your magic treasure?" "No need." Su Ji shook his head and said, "Save your magic power first. There are still places in the Star Moon Palace that need your help. Here, according to our previous discussion, Fairy Xingyu and I will take action." Yes, Su Ji is right. Fairy Xingyu also nodded and said, "There are many places that rely on the power of thunder. It's better for you to save your strength." With that, Fairy Xingyu nodded at Su Ji and said, "You go first. I will activate it later. Let's find the right palace door first." Xiao Hua hurriedly sent a voice transmission, "Fairy, just follow the direction I know. There's no need to search anymore." What? This time, even Su Ji was shocked. Your divine ability can actually see through the space that is close to chaos?" "It seems like it." Xiao Hua nodded. Seeing that a few heavenly kings from the Buddhist sect were also coming over, he said, "Let's hurry up and take action. Otherwise, the Buddhist sect will take the lead." "All right." Su Ji nodded. He raised his hand and took out a broken beast-shaped jade piece. The beast shape looked similar to the Luna beast in the Bright Moon Palace. However, it was broken and one could not see its full appearance. Su Ji opened his mouth and a water-blue thunderbolt fell into the jade piece. The entire jade piece emitted a blue brilliance. Boom! The moonlight that had originally fallen into the Star Moon Palace split into a pillar of moonlight and fell into the jade piece. Then, a broken outline of the Luna beast appeared in front of Xiao Hua. "It is indeed the Luna beast." Xiao Hua understood. Su Ji explained, "This is an ancient relic I obtained when I was patrolling the borders of a forbidden area. I don't know its specific power, but I can barely activate the moonlight within it. Xingyue, come and lend me a hand. Once Xiao Hua confirms the correct phantom image of the palace door, we will connect this pillar of starlight to that phantom image." "If that's the case." Fairy Xingyu bit her lip and said softly, "Won't the people from the four aristocratic families take advantage of us again? The Star Moon Palace was meant for them to take advantage of us." Su Ji scolded without holding back. "Furthermore, at this point, why are you still thinking about this? There. Since he was not afraid of others taking advantage of them, Xiaohua did not hide it anymore. He raised his hand and pointed at the spot where the tricolored brilliance had disappeared. Fairy Xingyu looked over. Indeed, there were several palace door shadows at the place where Xiaohua had pointed. Fairy Xingyu's face turned solemn. She slowly formed a seal with both hands. Layers of mist-like brilliance appeared in the surrounding void. When a low rumbling sound was heard, Fairy Xingyu raised her hand again. It was as if she was holding a heavy object in her hand. Then, she slowly dropped it toward the Luna Beast's shadow. Squeak! The Luna Beast's shadow made a sound that Xiaohua was familiar with. Then, the shadow started to solidify. Su Ji did not dare to delay. He opened his mouth and a mouthful of blood essence mixed with silver light fell into the Luna Beast's brilliance. Then, he pushed the blood essence along Xiaohua's moving finger. The Luna Beast immediately moved and rushed into the interlayer of space. In the chaotic interlayer of space, the Luna Beast's body could not help but spread out. However, there was a swaying tail behind it. The starlight in the tail was so bright that it dispersed the chaotic aura. Let's go! When Xiaohua saw the passageway appear, he hurriedly urged his body to rush in. However, Su Ji said in surprise, "Don't be hasty. The palace door shadow has appeared before." Senior. Xiaohua smiled and said, "The palace door shadow is just a facade." When Su Ji heard this, he could not help but laugh. Then, he held his forehead and said, "I have fallen into a habitual mindset." Habitual mindset? Xiaohua did not understand what Su Ji meant. However, before he could ask further, Su Ji turned his head and said, "Xingyu, follow behind me." Xiaohua, you stay at the back and protect me. Yes, senior. Xiaohua nodded. Su Ji stood up, and layers of strange markings appeared on his body. These markings rushed into the air and turned into tadpole-like runes, and when the runes flashed, a layer of dragon-scale-like armor appeared around Su Ji's body. There were many lightning runes on this armor, and an indescribable aura was emitted from the armor. Looking at Fairy Xingyu, the marks also fell off her body and arms. A layer of soft armor that was engraved with many mysterious runes was also revealed. This soft armor was covered in starlight. Whoosh! Su Ji's body swayed and a thunderbolt crashed into the star mark. He chased after the moon beast. Fairy Xingyu turned her head and looked at Xiaohua. She was a little surprised that Xiaohua did not take out any Dharma treasure or armor to protect himself. However, she did not have time to say more. She only nodded and signaled Xiaohua to be careful. Then, she turned into a ray of starlight and chased after him. The two immortals flew into the passageway and immediately emitted strange lights and shadows. The lights and shadows seemed to be extremely long and wide at the same time. An aura was emitted from the passageway like a tidal wave. Xiaohua took a deep breath and activated the vital energy in his body. Buzz buzz. Countless sword hairs appeared on the surface of his body. When he turned into a sword, Xiaohua also flashed and rushed into the passageway. Quick! The actions of the three naturally attracted the attention of the Confucian cultivators from the four aristocratic families. Dongfang Yushan waved his hand without hesitation and said, "According to the agreement with Zhai Xinglu, let's go in." Yes. The disciples of the Dongfang family responded happily. They formed a group and flew toward the Chidi River. The starry sky passageway, which was dozens of feet wide, became bigger and expanded in all directions. Before the disciples of the Dongfang family arrived, the Buddhist sex guardians, who had been paying attention to Xiaohua and the others, had already arrived. They also activated their bodies without hesitation and entered the passageway. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.